You mentioned bench press there, and you guys actually mentioned bench press in the paper and comparing sports performance applicability. So push press, push jerk versus training the bench press. And I know it depends on the athlete, and we're not talking powerlifters here because obviously you have to bench press. But in
Yeah.
regards to just sports performance in general, do you see the overhead derivatives being more useful than a strength based lift like the bench press?
In my opinion, they are definitely more useful. So I don't have nothing against the power lifters. I love powerlifting. I love benching, but I don't understand why so many articles about the bench press using the bench press as a benchmark to measure the strength capability of an athlete when the bench press is rarely seen in sport performance. So, for example, the push press, right? You have to transfer like the force from your lower body to your upper body in one continuous motion. So more coordination. The motor learning is like also more difficult. So I find more similarities with the push press, push air, split air, and I don't know, like snatch, whatever exercise, but not the bench press. I don't understand why so many articles on the bench press. I think it's a good exercise to be studied because, like many people, they control this exercise. They know how to perform it. And in my experience, it's very difficult to find people that they control the three techniques: the push press, push air, and split jerk. And I don't want to say about, for example, imagine if I want to study the squat jerk, it could be probably impossible, right? So, yep.
We have in the American football combine where our university athletes go and they have all the National Football League scouts watching them. The bench press is one of the big tests, and it's used for all of the positions. So I could see now we're talking testing versus training, but if you're going to the combine, you're training for the tests essentially, and the bench press I can see the utility there for linemen for sure because they're literally doing bench presses, every single play as they're pushing on, but they also test it, for the defensive backs and the running backs, these little guys, and the receivers. But I think that maybe it's easier to perform. There's less time. There's less learning time that maybe is required. And also, I would say on average, maybe the positions are easier to get into for most. So there's a lower barrier to entry, which is maybe why we just gravitate towards that as like a proxy for upper body strength. But I'm just kind of thinking like, a push press test in the combine would be interesting. It would be harder to, I was going to say it would be harder to judge, but those bench press tests in the combine get kind of sketchy too. John,
They're pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's the most lit session in the entire NFL Combine. People are screaming, they blast the music, but they're bouncing it off their chest.
No lockout. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But I think when it comes to, because I've thought about this a lot when it comes to the combine and testing, and you talked about impulse, and one of the things about the overhead variations within weightlifting is something people have alluded to quite a bit recently, which is not just creating force, but also absorbing and redirecting force. In the dip and drive aspect of the push press and the power jerk, as linemen are doing a bench press, they also have a 285-pound man hurtling at them that is about to hit them. So they have to take force and then redistribute it out, where that dip phase, and then like you're talking about, Marco, the propulsion phase, it would seem that would actually be more applicable. The question I have, though, is the same thing. The bench press is very simple. Is it a learning curve problem? And is there a tier of technical requirements for some of this stuff, because I'm just thinking even from a youth training aspect, like we talk about the learning curve for a push press, and I would still probably say that's going to be easier to learn than a clean from the floor, right? Now, which has more benefits, I don't know, because we still need more data, but a bench press is just really easy for people to learn. It might not be applicable, but it's very easy to learn.
Yeah, but here my point would be, for example, if we compare a bodybuilder versus any kind of this sport that you mentioned it before, maybe a good bodybuilder, a strong one, a heavyweight one, maybe he could bench like more kg than any of these athletes. So, and we could have this measure. Imagine if we test all of them and we could say this guy is very strong. But I'm sure for that, if we compare this same bodybuilder and if we like apply a push press test instead of a bench press test, we could differentiate more the sporting population than the bodybuilder. We could do that because I'm sure for that they are gonna be able, at least just with maybe one day of a learning session, they are gonna be able to apply this force from the lower body to the upper body because they have more coordination of that, and it's a different way of training. It's just something like hypothetically, because we don't have enough information about that. This is just like my opinion, And yeah, definitely I would try to use a test. For example, when you explain something which was very interesting about the line back, like trying to block how is it that called? Tackle, or when you block like the opponent? No?
Yeah, so in like a rugby term, right? You're coming across for the ruck, and you're draping over the ball, and you have to stop them from coming over you. It's kind of the same thing in American football. They're going to backpedal. Somebody's coming at them, and they have to stop that force and push that person in a particular direction. So they have to be able to take that force from somebody coming at them and absorb.
Even for that, when you are like pushing them, you still have to keep yourself in the straight position.
Yeah.
It means that your lower body, through your trunk, they are stabilizing your position, and then you push. But if you are doing a bench press, we are just measuring your ability to push under stable conditions, not under unstable conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And in this way, you are absorbing an impact from a guy that is coming to you, right, to like make a collision against you, and then you have to stabilize your whole body, right, and then transmitting the force from the lower body to your upper body and then pushing him. So I think that's why push press or any kind of this exercise are more applicable to sports than the bench press. I'm not saying that we should delete the bench press from the general sports preparation or even from the test, but I would say that's my opinion, and I think many trainers or many coaches, they are like being aware of the benefits of this exercise, and they are gonna implement them like in a few time.